Welcome to WYCD Wicked, that stands for What You Can Do. We have on the docket today a third Trump tape. There is yet another recording of Donald Trump apparently committing crimes in Georgia. We've just found out about that evidence existing, but it is not news to the grand jury, which appears to have recommended indictments for people you wouldn't be surprised by. That is more or less what I think God and everyone else was anticipating. Then the GOP crime wave continues. We got a couple of stories regarding our old pals in the GOP who are just treating American politics like criminal organization, essentially. Like if you want to get into the big leagues of crime, you simply join the GOP. That seems to be the understanding. And then a Nebraska senator's filibuster Hail Mary is successful. Your old pal Jake was pretty burned out yesterday, having a heck of a time getting my thoughts compressed to an amount of time that would have retained any audience to hear him. And I was going to talk about this yesterday. It was in the docket. I thought, you know what? Let me get this presentation right. Let me take a day, catch my breath. By the way, everybody was really, really kind about that. I appreciate it. Thank you. But overnight, there was an update, a change, and it appears this filibuster did accomplish what was set out to do. It's a great story for how things can go well and why fighting is important. Staying aggressive when you are right is important. If you go into Congress, or if you go into your state House or Senate, it is, and if you believe in why you're there, you didn't lie about why you want to be there, you honestly believe you're there to help folks, it is important to play everything to the very hilt. Keep the fight up even when it seems hopeless. And this senator is a great example of why that is. I also have what you can do about all of it. I'm looking forward to getting into the show today. Starting a little bit later today as well, I'm going to experiment today, tomorrow, over the weekend with a couple different, this is just some housekeeping stuff while we allow people to arrive, but I'm going to experiment with a couple of different ways of doing this show, which will gather the largest audience. I'm going to look at what the data says, and will be easiest to do in a formulaic manner, as in I can set up a process from recording to putting out the VOD that is going to work best. So expect odd streaming times and occasional bonus streams. We've been going the other way with taking a day off when needed. But I'd also like to see how streams play at a different time of day without losing the normal evening audience. So if you have comments, if you have suggestions, let me know. There's all kinds of ways to contact me. There's wickednetwork.com. There's if you're in the Senate right now, you're watching the live stream, you can let me know what you prefer in the comments, or leave comments on the video, leave comments on messages on the community tab of the channel. All of that is within your power, and I'm listening. So by all means, let me hear it. Let's get right to it. There is a third Trump tape. There is yet another recording of Donald Trump appearing to break the law in Georgia. Here is Lawrence O'Donnell getting us started talking about this. We also have Midas Touch weighing in, and it's, of course, always a treat to hear them. Here we go.
It's going to be massive. A lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. Those are the words of someone who has seen and heard and evaluated all of the evidence of Donald Trump's interference in the 2020 election in Georgia. It's going to be massive. That statement was made by one of the members of the special grand jury whose report has recommended the indictment of more than a dozen people in Georgia. And we know that number because the first member of the grand jury to be publicly interviewed, the foreperson, Emily Kors, revealed that number in interviews that she did last month. 5 other unnamed grand jurors met together in a conference room with 2 Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporters and have revealed much more that should be deeply disturbing and worrisome for Donald Trump. Prosecutors in Georgia and in New York City now appear to be in a race with history. They both appear to be on the verge of being the first prosecutor in history to bring criminal charges against a former president of the United States. No one is suggesting that the charges that could be brought in Manhattan will be massive. The current expectation in Manhattan is for a possible 2-count indictment of Donald Trump for falsifying business records and possibly violating state tax law or violating state campaign finance law.
Okay, I do want to clarify one point on this because I've heard this back and forth quite a bit. Like, which is a serious enough crime to be the crime that he gets indicted with? The theme of both of these things that I want to play for you is that it does not matter. It doesn't matter. The only question we have to ask, did he do a thing? Was that thing illegal? That's it. That is really all there is. The reality that we should be prepared for and what they're going to talk about in all kinds of detail, all of which will help you understand the coverage going forward, of which there's about to be a ton. They're going to go over the details of these. They're going to break down which is serious, which is not. But the thing that is going to happen certainly is once one person indicts, all the others will have a massive, all the other prosecutors will have a massive weight taken off their shoulders because they will no longer be the first prosecutor to indict a former president. You would think that would be the dream of all prosecutors. Ooh, I can't wait to get the biggest of fish one day. But no, it appears to be not the case. They all appear terrified, utterly terrified of the idea of doing this. So, it does not matter as far as pursuing this in a court what history is gonna say about the first. It doesn't matter if it will affect politics. It really doesn't. It just comes down to, did the guy do it? And was that thing illegal? Which can be parsed out in front of a judge. Some of these cases, and you got to brace yourself for this, it might infuriate you even. Some of these cases might not be provable in court. There might be a loophole that means Trump gets off scot-free. But the watershed moment here is that once one indictment is filed, once charges are filed, more will come. it will be easier to file the next ones and the next ones and the next ones. And one case will be in, multiple cases will be in court at the same time. So, don't be afraid. Don't think of this like any other criminal prosecution. Prosecutors believe somebody did something illegal. They make the best case they possibly can, and they take it to court. That appears to be what's happening here. And what Lawrence is now saying is that, unlike in New York, where the charges are comparatively lesser, and I did this whole this whole aside to say that's still okay. That's not a knock against New York. But unlike New York, in Georgia, where there is mounds of evidence, including this recording we just found out about, apparently it's going to be massive, the charges. Ooh, I can't wait to see it.
Such an indictment will surely be historic. It will be important. It could make Donald Trump a convicted felon. But such an indictment will not be, by any description, massive. What happens in Georgia is going to be massive, according to one of the grand jurors. The grand jurors are allowed by Georgia law to reveal everything except what was said in their deliberations among themselves. They could reveal the names of everyone they recommended for indictment, but none of the jurors have been willing to go that far. They did tell the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about some new evidence that has never been reported before, and it seems that everyone in Georgia was recording their phone calls with Donald Trump. In some states, it is against the law to record a telephone call without alerting the other party to the phone call that you are recording it. Georgia is not one of those states. And this is one of those moments where we can be grateful for Donald Trump's impermeable ignorance. And
side note, maybe let me know in the comments, how do you feel about that? I honestly am not sure how I feel about the recording of phone calls. There is maybe an assumption of privacy when you call somebody. But then again, drug dealers have classically referred to drugs as all kinds of with all kinds of nicknames over the phone because they are aware of the fact that they're not necessarily. I don't know how I feel about that. I honestly don't. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think.
Relentless stupidity, because Donald Trump picked up telephones in the White House and called Georgia, where it is perfectly legal for the recipient of his phone calls to record those phone calls.
I do know how I feel about the White House. I feel like everything the president does in their capacity as president should be recorded, and those recordings should be preserved. We should have 24 hours of recording not 24 hours. We should have a full workday of recording every single time the president clocks in. This is an employee of ours. I don't effing trust this employee. We have seen in the past that it is not a good idea to trust this employee. I want them, anything they do official, to be recorded in case this eventually goes in front of a judge. I think that we could get bipartisan support on that, and we should push for it. But it's an argument for a later time.
Without telling them. Now, we already know that resulted in what is now the most famous and notorious recorded telephone call in the history of telecommunications.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
That was, of course, Donald Trump's call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who testified about that call to the grand jury. The grand jurors told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about another recorded telephone call. They, quote, heard a recording of a phone call Trump placed to late Georgia House Speaker David Ralston, in which the president asked the fellow Republican to convene a special session of the legislature to overturn Democrat Joe Biden's narrow victory in Georgia. One juror said Ralston proved to be an amazing politician. The speaker basically cut the president off. He said, I will do everything in my power that I think is appropriate. He just basically took the wind out of the sails. The juror said, well, thank you, is all the president could say.
That right there, in any other era with any other president, that right there would be a conviction. I mean, that would cause in any other era, any other president, that would cause their party to abandon them in mass. That's devastating.
David Ralston did not call a special session of the legislature to overturn the election. David Ralston died in November of last year. But thanks to his recording of Donald Trump's phone call, the most important evidence that David Ralston could provide to that grand jury of Donald Trump's criminal interference in the election lives after him. Think about that. For 2 years and almost 3 months now, we have all known that Donald Trump made a phone call to Georgia's Secretary of State asking to find 11,000 votes, and that was patently illegal on its face. But only Donald Trump knew that he also made a similarly criminal phone call to Georgia's Speaker of the House of Representatives, David Ralston. And then, in November of last year, David Ralston died. And Donald Trump might have gotten a few more minutes of sleep that night thinking, that's one witness who can never testify against him. But David Ralston had the presence of mind to tape Donald Trump's phone call to him. And so now David Ralston is, in effect, testifying against Donald Trump from the grave.
Believe it or not, that testimony can be a lot more devastating than if he were alive. Testimony, that evidence, I should say, can be a lot more devastating than if the guy were alive. Simply because you can't say that he has anything to gain by it. In fact, to my knowledge, if that recording had been done, and I realize there's such a thing as fruit of the poisoned tree or whatever it is, but if that recording had been done in another state where there is no consent, or where there is rather required consent to be recorded, I think it could still be used. It's neither here nor there because it's totally, completely in the clear. Let's look at the actual article. Let's have us a gander at what they're really talking about here. Well, cripes. There we go. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Fulton County jurors heard third Trump tape. Other highlights from AGC's interview. So this is from the horse's mouth, so to speak. New witnesses. Audio of a third phone conversation between former President Donald Trump and a Georgia official. A bomb-sniffing dog. Those are among the previously undisclosed details from the Fulton County Special Grand Jury's 8-month criminal investigation that participants shared with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in an exclusive interview. Yes, we do indeed have the mic on. Oh, good. The AGC recently interviewed 5 jurors, 2 women and 3 men, who examined whether Trump or his criminal allies interfered in Georgia's 2020 elections. I think they did, but we'll find out in a court of law. They agreed to share their experience, says, on the condition of anonymity, since many feared for their safety and privacy. Just want to remind you, it's not nothing that people in the trial of a president, theoretically, are afraid for their safety. That should tell you a hell of a lot about the character of the person on trial. Let me put it like this. If Jimmy Carter was on trial, you think anybody would be afraid for their safety? If Obama, if Biden, if Bill Clinton, if any of them were on trial, you think anybody would be afraid for their safety? Bush? I don't like Bush, but do you think anybody would be afraid for their safety? I don't. Their comments came weeks after Emily Kors, the jury forewoman, made national headlines for her forthcoming interviews about the group's work. Kors was not among the jurors interviewed for this story, though the participants largely corroborated details Kors shared with the AGC and other media outlets. All right, so let's look at just their summary here. The Ralston tape. Jurors confirmed that they heard audio from a recorded phone conversation between Trump and late Georgia House Speaker David Ralston. Ralston had previously told a North Georgia media outlet that he was contacted by Trump and his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Okay, remember, we're expecting to see Rudy in court on charges as well in December 2020, but the existence of a tape had not been previously known. Jurors said that during the conversation, the president asked Ralston to convene a special session of the legislature to overturn Democrat Joe Biden's narrow victory in Georgia. The speaker basically cut the president off. One juror recalled, he said, "I'll do everything in my power that I think is appropriate." All right, the Perdue testimony. And that's what Lawrence O'Donnell went over. The Perdue testimony. The jurors said they heard testimony from former U.S. Senator David Perdue, God help us, a close Trump ally who lost his reelection, thank God, bid to Democrat John Ossoff in January 2021. Perdue was questioned about a meeting at Truist Park in December 2020, during which he urged Governor Brian Kemp to convene a special legislative session, a juror said. Perdue, I'm expecting then, to be charged as well. Perdue did not respond to a request for comment. Jurors also said they spoke with Perdue's colleague, former Republican U.S. Senator Kelly Loeffler. Possible charges for Loeffler. Flynn security. This is going to be huge. Law enforcement was worried enough about the crowd Michael Flynn, Trump's one-time national security advisor, and also a man who needed to get a pardon from Trump to avoid prison, associated with that it dispatched additional lawyers for security ahead of his testimony. So let me just restate that. Law enforcement was worried about, or say that again, law enforcement was worried enough about the crowd Michael Flynn associated with that it dispatched additional layers of security ahead of his testimony. They were concerned about the crowd Michael Flynn is running with, a former general, and they think they need extra security because of him. This is serious, folks. These people need to be in prison if we can prove in a court of law that they did what it looks like they did. Officers had a bomb-sniffing German Shepherd inspect the grand jury room because right-wing terrorism is a thing, folks, a precaution they hadn't used for any other witness. Meanwhile, sheriff's deputies and marshals carrying automatic weapons were stationed outside the courthouse. Specifically, law enforcement was concerned about who might turn up to support Flynn, a prominent figure among the far-right conspiracy theorists and Christian national groups. No bomb was found, and there were no known incidents involving Flynn supporters, thankfully. Flynn refused to answer most of the questions posed by prosecutors, asserting his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, jurors said. So Flynn hangs with a crowd that gets the court so concerned about court security that they got people with assault rifles stationed, ready to rumble. They got a bomb-sniffing dog, or multiple apparently, going through the courthouse, making sure that there is, I don't know how many bomb-sniffing dogs, but making sure there's no bombs. And then the guy shows up and just says, fifth. That's what we're dealing with. Lindsey Graham. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham is a vocal Trump supporter, except those couple of days when he thought there might be consequences for a coup. But when he testified before the grand jury, the South Carolina Republican sounded skeptical of former president's claims of election fraud. According to one of the grand jurors, Graham said that after the election, if somebody had told Trump that aliens came down and stole Trump ballots, that Trump would have believed it. Graham said that after the election, if somebody had told Trump that aliens came down and stole Trump ballots, Trump would have believed it. That is what we're dealing with. Trump did not care. We're laughing at, bamboo in the ballot boxes. Of course they are grabbing onto anything they can. Truth is not important to these people. Graham's office did not respond to a request for comment. Law lesson. Jurors revealed that the first witness they heard from was Bo Rutledge, a dean of the former University of Georgia Law School. Rutledge, who appeared under subpoena, explained presidential election law and repeatedly told jurors he was nervous because he didn't want to make mistakes. Rutledge was an interesting choice for Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, a Democrat. He once clerked for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, among the most conservative members of the High Court. Jurors said they found Rutledge's presentation, in which he explained the legal process after ballots have been cast, highly instructive. Okay, second thoughts. Let me go down to our last section here. Trump was not subpoenaed to testify before the grand jury, nor was he invited to testify voluntarily. Jurors suggested the decision was not made by prosecutors. Jurors suggested the decision was made by prosecutors, not them. Some reasoned that he would likely have invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, as he did repeatedly when he was deposed by the New York Attorney General. But one juror said that, in hindsight, he wished that jurors had requested Trump's testimony, especially after Manhattan prosecutors moved to do so in a separate criminal investigation into the 45th president of the United States. We are living in a historic era. We're going to go over to Midas Touch here and listen to their breakdown of it. To you right now, I just want to stress that this is every bit as crazy as it sounds. Like, it's easy. It's so easy to think, like, are we just getting swept up in a media storm? Is this not as big a deal? I feel like I've been hearing a lot about this. Yeah, that's the effect not seeing punishment for obvious crimes has. But this is sounding more and more, all of these are sounding more and more like mob cases, complete with the consequences for getting it wrong, which is actual harm to people. Let's listen to Midas Touch. They have an excellent breakdown.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, I want to direct your attention to a few stunning new quotes from the jurors in the Georgia case, the Fulton County case against Donald Trump, and that was...
God help me. I said Midas Touch like a dozen times. It's not Midas Touch. It's The Legal Breakdown with Brian Tyler Cohen and Glenn Kirshner. I love both these cats. I don't know why I attributed that to Midas Touch. Anyway, yes, this is The Legal Breakdown.
In the Georgia Journal-Constitution, one juror said, quote, "I tell my wife, if every person in America knew every single word of information that we know, this country would not be divided as it is right now." And finally, here's the kicker here. A lot's going to come out sooner or later, and it's going to be massive. It's going to be massive. In your professional opinion, is this the kind of language used if an exoneration is in the works?
Yeah, I think it unlikely the jurors were talking about a massive exoneration of Donald Trump because the grand jury believes he's done nothing wrong. Right. I'll tell you, this is both really ominous for Trump and his criminal associates, And it's also a really good read. I hope everybody will read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution article, because rarely do you get this kind of insight into what was going on in the grand jury. I, as a prosecutor, got to see the inside of the grand jury all the time, but rarely does the general public get to see it. And when these grand jurors are talking about just how powerful the evidence is, how upsetting the evidence is, multiple grand jurors said they would sit in their cars at the end of the day and cry. Why would they cry? Because of what some of these people who were being investigated, presumably Trump and company, were doing to everyday citizens, to people like Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, the election workers in Georgia, who were not only vilified, but they had their lives threatened because Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani lied about them, claiming they're, stealing Trump votes, which was absolutely absurd. I mean, you could tell by reading this really deep dive piece that these grand jurors, took their work deadly seriously. They were really, I think, impacted by what they were seeing. And, there's another quote in the article that they said, it was incredibly important to us to get this right. And when they close out the article with one of the grand jurors saying, what's about to come is going to be massive, it's going to be massive, I'm starting to believe, Brian, that we're likely to see a big old RICO conspiracy indictment, not just sort of a series of more discrete standalone indictments of individuals. I think that's reinforced by what we heard from the forewoman, Emily Kors, when she said, look, you can expect to see more than a dozen people charged in this case. So I think we're going to see a big old conspiracy indictment issued by the grand jury after Fani Willis is done her work.
Yeah, and just to build on what you said earlier about Shay Moss and the whole issue with the elections workers, that part, I remember that was the one part of the hearings that really just kind of broke my heart, because these are just people who are not only haven't done anything wrong, but actually are doing their civic duty, are making our elections run. And just for the crime of being there, it really is amazing to see what Donald Trump and the rest of his acolytes, like what they will torch in their quest to just gain power, and who.
I am so glad.
Whose lives they will just
phrase it a little better. I am so glad that that he brought up that fact. That he brought up the fact that these people they're not just regular folks. I mean, they are regular folks, but they're not only that. They're doing work for us, for our benefit. I don't want to go sit all day in an election voting booth. I want to spend as little time in my day voting as possible. I'm a lazy man. I am very appreciative of the fact I want to vote right. I certainly do want to get my vote in, but I'm lazy. And I'm appreciative of the fact that there is always a group of folks there who volunteered their time to go and run this stuff. That's all they were doing. In exchange for that, for daring to be helpful human beings, for daring to be involved, they became targets of dangerous threats by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has put their lives in danger. It's got to be dealt with. At every level, we got to go after this guy, and we need to remember not to forget that one. Not that one. Because that's the least American thing I've ever heard.
One roughshod over, and how many just completely innocent people's lives were turned upside down just for this fairy tale that he was trying to concoct with the help of these people who just don't have any scruples, any shame, and who deserve everything that's coming to them. Glenn, there was one other quote that I just want to reiterate here, and that is, if everyone knew every word of information that we know, this country wouldn't be so divided. Now, that line from a juror in the Georgia case suggests that one of the two sides of the political spectrum is being lied to. I don't think that we have to sit here and pretend to not know which side that is. What were your thoughts on that line in particular?
Yeah, it was a very telling line. And I think what the grand juror was communicating is there's the truth, and they got a whole lot of evidence that was truthful and honest and accurate. And then there were a bunch of lies. And they actually put the witnesses that they saw in three batches. They put the truth-telling witnesses. They put a second category of witnesses who really didn't want to be there. They needed a subpoena to compel their testimony. But once they got there, they told the truth, even if reluctantly. And then the third batch were the people who were most closely aligned to Donald Trump, who were unwilling to tell the truth or who would just invoke their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination.
That was such a smart move on their part. Don't jumble up the liars and the truth tellers so you have to remember in your head the individual person. No, put them all in one group and then put all the next in another, so on and so forth, so the jurors only have to remember the day. I think that's quite good.
It's pretty clear that the grand jurors were kind of signaling that if everybody could just see the truth and see the lies,
Boom.
then maybe, that would move the needle. Maybe there would only be one view of what really happened. Now, I would hasten to add that might be a little naive because there are probably some hardcore Trump supporters who are never going to be moved by the truth. But I thought it was a pretty telling comment by the grand juror.
And just one more point on this. You'd mentioned that it was so surprising that we're getting this kind of insight, from out a 30,000-foot view, that we're getting this kind of insight into the grand jury. Why are we getting this insight? Why is this something that we wouldn't normally see, and yet why are we getting this insight now?
So most jurisdictions have rules, and those rules involve grand jurors not being permitted to ever talk about what went on inside the grand jury unless there was a special order from the judge permitting them to speak. In Georgia, the rules are very different. In Georgia, you can speak about anything that happened inside the grand jury. The only thing you cannot discuss publicly are your deliberations, when it's just the grand jurors privately discussing what the evidence means, who should be indicted, but everything else is fair game. Who testified, what they said. And it's funny because the judge also made clear that they could talk about their recommendations in their report. Interestingly, none of the grand jurors who have given interviews to the media has been willing to talk about precisely what's in the report or who they recommended should be indicted. So they're kind of editing themselves and actually holding back, not necessarily disclosing everything. Under the rules of Georgia, they're permitted to disclose.
Yeah, and I guess we don't really have to. We already know that Fani Willis is releasing her decision about whether or not to indict imminently. So I guess at this point, it really doesn't matter because we'll find out that information soon enough. But it is important to note that they have stayed within the confines of the rules that are being imposed on them. Not to bury the lead here, there is another case that is racing toward indictment. That's the Manhattan District Attorney case.
I do think that's worthy of listening to. I've included the link to the full legal breakdown in the description. I'm going to move on from that, though, for now, because this is really about the effect the Georgia investigation has had. Let's talk about what we can do. It is perhaps the most commonly recommended thing on this channel to do. Keep up the pressure. Contact the Department of Justice. Let them know that you see him. You see what Trump has done. You expect indictments. There's a general contact link in the description. I want to point out, think about all we know as a result of the Georgia investigation. Think about all we know as a result of the New York investigations. Think about all we know as a result of the state-level investigations. A ton. Think about what we would know if all we had were the federal investigations. We would have some talk about documents by Jack Smith. Really by Merrick Garland via Jack Smith, which could be easily compared to the other investigations. Thank you very much, timer. Which could be easily compared to the other investigations into documents that other former White House workers had. We'd have bupkis, in other words. Yes, they may eventually even get a conviction. But it's been made crystal clear that the state investigations are where progress gets made. It's where the tone is set. It's where accountability is going to happen. Take advantage of that. If you are in Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Let's see if I can do it all before I get there. I didn't. Arizona. Or Arizona. Oh, I was so close. If you're in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, that means right now your state could open a state-level investigation into the 2020 fake electors, just like Michigan did. Similar to what Georgia's doing. We could have, in other words, 2.5 times the amount of pressure added. Get it started. Contact. I've provided a link, if you're in one of those states, to every one of those attorney generals. You can just click on that link and directly go to their contact page and tell them. If you want, you can just include the script that I've provided. AG Merrick Garland has had years to put together a case against those who tried to deny my vote in 2020, yet he let the 2022 election pass without filing charges. He has been unwilling or unable to hold accountable those who were responsible for the fake elector plot. As your constituent, I want you to protect my vote by opening a state investigation into the fake elector plot. You can just copy and paste that if you want, but the point is we need to put as much pressure on the Department of Justice at all levels as we can to get Trump indicted, if indeed it turns out that he was the one arranging for people to do this. It does appear that that's the case from all the public has seen. The January 6th committee seems to think that's the case. There's no reason that our state attorney generals shouldn't open state investigations. The hell of an opening segment. Let's look at the comments. Joff Taylor says, I believe Michigan is a state where you don't have to notify the second party of their being recorded. You know what? I honestly don't know. I used to record people literally every phone conversation, but I would lead it with, just a heads up, I'm recording this for notes. So, I don't know. I grew up, 1949 vintage says, that was Joff Taylor before. Thank you very much, Joff. Nancy DeLue says, I grew up, 1949 vintage, nice, being told to never write or speak on the phone without self-censorship. Only sub-voice could you talk to your best friends in person. Plausible deniability. True. Nancy DeLue says, in 1955, barely able to write, but knowing the concept of plausible deniability, this was my folks' response to red-baiting McCarthyism. Smart. 70 years later, has much changed. Catherine Wolf, good to see you, says, hi, all. Patrick Thibodeau says, right-wingers lose it when you tell them Trump is responsible for Ashley Babbitt's death, but it's absolutely true. Yes, it is. I mean, literal cause and effect. Yes. She would not have died without his lies. It's just reality. Patrick Thibodeau says, I think the Stormy Daniels case is the weakest thing they have on Trump. Nothing will happen to him from that. I agree with the first part. I'm not sure I agree with the second part. The pessimist in me is tempted to say that you're right, but I also want to temper that with the sea change that has happened. A lot of it, frankly, is going to depend on what the public thinks, or rather, what the public mood is. It's disturbing to me how important that is. It really is. It shouldn't be a matter of public taste if a crime is pursued or not. But clearly it is. We have seen directly now that yes, if prosecutors don't think we're watching, they simply don't do their jobs. John McDonough says, joining late. Sorry, John, you bastard. No, thank you so much for joining. It's good to see you, sir. Delighted to have a member here. And by the way, if you guys got an extra $5 burning a hole in your pocket, you can keep me in Sody Pop by becoming a member. I'm going to, by the way, tonight, ask the members, a.k.a. the lobbyists, about a potential Friday show that I might want to start up. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not, so I'm gonna poll you guys. So John, keep an eye out in the membership. Keep an eye out on your notifications. I'm gonna put out a message for members later tonight. We're gonna do a poll, and I'm gonna do what the poll says to do. Well, let's keep this going. Since we're talking about GOP crime, let's talk about the GOP crime wave continuing. Just like the folks who noted that racists tend to join the GOP because that's where you can be a racist and get away with it. Similarly, criminals seem to be attracted to this party because a lot of the time that's where you can go to do crime. That's where you can be a criminal and get away with it. There's a couple of lesser known folks, but not unknown. One of them's George Santos, that recently have had more of. Sorry, I gotta be cool for this. They have had more of their criminal dealings come to light, and it's just been a hot mess. Let's look at TYT, and I believe I'm right this time. Midas Touch talking about it. God, I hope I'm right.
This is Michael Popak, Legal AF, with another hot take.
All right.
Well, George Santos loves the movies, and one movie he probably loves the best is Emily the Criminal, that movie about skimming credit cards and creating fake credit cards.
John, Patrick, Catherine, everybody in the comments, let me know. Have you heard of Emily the Criminal? I have not even heard of that movie, and I consider myself somewhat of an aficionado. Not really, but Michael Popak's adorable. Let me just say that for the record. He's convinced everybody knows exactly what he's talking about when he mentions Emily the Criminal. It's really sweet, and I adore Michael Popak.
And using them as part of a theft ring, because according to a new sworn letter by a Brazilian confessed thief who was caught in 2017 skimming credit cards from ATM machines using devices like skimmers that you actually insert into the machine and little pinhole cameras in order to pick up people's passwords and pins. The mastermind of that criminal scheme that spanned the United States all the way down to Brazil was one George Santos, or as he was known then, Anthony DeValder. This is not news to the Secret Service. Secret Service, when they're not busy guarding the president and elected officials, one of the things they also do is investigate financial crimes hitting the banking system around the world. And in 2017, they picked up one Gustavo Trella of Brazil, who was according to Santos at the time, a friend of his. And they picked him up in Seattle using a skimming device at Pike's Place Market to create PIN cards, ATM cards, credit cards, and the like. He is convicted, one felony, and deported back to Brazil. In 2017, George Santos had two other connections to Trella, a friend of his. He appeared at his bail hearing, odd, said he was a family friend to the Kings County Superior Court Judge O'Donnell. This is all recorded on audio, which we'll play now.
Present in the courtroom is George Anthony DeVolder. He is a family friend of Mr. Trailhead. Mr. DeVolder lives in New York. I've spoken.
Just so you know, what you're hearing is incredibly common. It's incredibly common in the low-level criminal community. Your old pal Jake's been at a couple of these, standing where Anthony DeVolder was, George Santos, a.k.a., waiting on a buddy to get bailed out of the hoosegow. It is only relevant, you only have to talk to the judge if your involvement with the person needs clarification. So if you're a friend and you've put up the bail and you literally just say I'm a friend, to my knowledge, that's the last you hear about it. But this bit of clarification is quite common, particularly if they're saying, no, the person doesn't have a place to stay. They're going to stay at this person's place. This person is not an obvious relation. We need to explain that to the judge.
Spoken to him multiple times over the last couple of weeks. This is the second time that he's flown out here to assist Mr. Trailhead. He has arranged an extended.
Side note, I just want to say, if you can possibly help it, never get arrested on a Friday. Never get arrested on a Friday, especially a Friday evening, because the judge won't see it till Monday. And no matter what you did, even if it's, say, you were just, let's say, drunk in public and acting a fool, you're going to be spending the weekend in an uncomfortable place, unable to contact anybody, and except, for the most part, and you won't be leaving until the judge has had time to hear you at some point on Monday. Ooh, that's a rough place to be.
Airbnb for Mr. Trailhead to stay at during the pendency of this case.
So what's the connection between this gentleman and your client?
They're family friends.
Family friends.
Yes, and he has been helping Mr. Trailhead to arrange a place to stay here in Seattle while his case is pending.
The state hasn't shown me any evidence at this point that he is connected to anyone else in terms of running this scheme. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Let me hear from his friend briefly. All right, sir, tell me your name. Okay, so how do you know this man?
We're family friends. Our parents know each other from Brazil. We've known each other for a few years. Lost touch. Got back into touch back in September last year in Orlando when I was relocated from New York for work into the Orlando area.
And so what do you do for work?
I'm an aspiring politician and I work for Goldman Sachs.
You work for Goldman Sachs in New York?
There he is, on tape. Yup, he says. Lying to a judge. Lying to a judge in a criminal proceeding. Now, truth be told, I can't remember how this works exactly. I don't know if he was sworn in, but you can't lie to a judge. This guy, let's be honest, appears to be a career criminal. A low-level career criminal. Just a con man. Just stealing credit card numbers. Doing the same thing, if I recall correctly, that John Connor did in Terminator 2 with his credit card skimming. I think Connor hacked an ATM machine. But no, what this little racket was where you plug in a little case around a legitimate credit card machine, and what that does is steals credit card payment information, or rather what it does is copy that credit card information. Then it lets the transaction go through as normal. It passes it on to the genuine machine, and it provides the thief with a copy of that information. That is what Anthony DeVolder / George Santos appears to have been involved with and appears to be lying to a judge about. In this case, he's lying about his employment, which would be the sort of employment that would make you think this person isn't involved in the crime. They make too much money already.
Okay. And so you've rented a room or something for him?
I'm just pending your decision here so I can finalize a long extended stay apartment through Airbnb or whatever website it is. Right now I'm in Hotel by the station.
And you're going to do this for him if he's released?
Well, his family is the one actually sending the money over to make sure we take care of everything that he needs and to comply for everything here, as far as
And where's his family?
his family's in Brazil.
In Brazil. What part of Brazil?
They're in Espírito Santo.
Okay. Is that where your family?
The judge here, clearly skeptical, also does not have evidence that what part of Brazil. That's sort of like when you check an ID at a bar, and then you say, okay, what year were you born? It's helpful to occasionally F with a liar this way and see if they can answer a question. So I think this is just evidence that the judge was suspicious.
And you can hear George Santos there saying to the judge, who's very quizzical about this young man in front of him, who claims to be a friend of the defendant who's being set for bail, that he's also works at Goldman Sachs, which we know now is a bald-faced lie. So he lied to a judge during a bail hearing, Mr. Santos, Mr. DeVolder, in aid of a friend of his who was skimming credit cards, Gustavo Trella. Now, Mr. Santos was interviewed by the Secret Service back in 2017. They found their way to Santos not because of the bail hearing, but because there was a FedEx package and a rental car used by Trella with Santos's Florida address in it. Turned out Trella had lived in Florida in that very house. And
the evidence the judge probably suspected was out there, but didn't have at the time. Hence the extra layer of questioning.
Trailhead, who has now put out a sworn statement, and we'll put that up on the screen, under penalty of perjury against Mr. Santos, says the following about Santos being the mastermind of this criminal ring. He says, I saw Congressman Santos, also known as Anthony DeVolder, when I saw him on television, and that's him. In 2016, I met Santos when I rented a room in his apartment in Florida. That's when I learned from him how to clone ATM and credit cards. The sworn statement goes on that Santos taught me, Trailhead, how to skim card information and how to clone cards. He gave me the materials and taught me how to put skimming devices and cameras on ATM machines. He goes on to say that Santos had a warehouse in Orlando, Florida, in which he had all of the materials. This is like a scene right out of Emily the Criminal, which Santos had all the machines and parts he needed, the printers, the blank ATM and credit cards that were going to be engraved with a stolen account and personal information. Trailhead goes on under oath and says, Santos gave me at his warehouse all of this material in order to conduct the skimming. Right after he gave me the card skimming and cloning machines, he taught me how to use them. He then claims that Santos flew him, Trailhead, to Seattle, Washington, where he started stealing credit card information from ATM terminals, and the deal was a 50-50 split. They would use computers to download the information, and they used external hard drives to share information, and then claims at the end, this should come as no shock, that George Santos stole money from Trailhead. This is all in this sworn statement, this sworn declaration dated March of 2023 that has now been provided to the Secret Service. It was written in Brazilian Portuguese. It was translated and provided to the Secret Service, who I am sure are going to reopen the investigation related to Mr. Trailhead to get to the bottom of whether George Santos is the mastermind right? Is he the Kaiser Soze, to continue the movie reference on the aftermath of the Oscars, of this?
So he saw Emily the criminal, but he didn't see the usual suspects enough, at least, to know that it's Kaiser Soze. What is your Netflix queue like, Michael Popak? So yeah, how much more did we need to know about George Santos? Did we really need to know anything else? No. No. This is obvious. This has been obvious. This behavior is not at all a surprise. There's nothing surprising about this because we know about all the other stuff he did. The only value this has is to highlight what an absolute clown show this is. An absolute clown show. If you are in the Republican Party right now, you need to decide, do you have ethics? Do you have principles? If you do, you cannot stand by the GOP keeping George Santos where he is. You just can't. Keeping him on, I know he willingly stepped down from committees. This guy needs to be outskis. You got to be gone. You got to get rid of him entirely. The only reason he is there is because he's a vote. He's another vote for GOP things. But there is such a thing as getting rid of a guy, as getting rid of a politician on principle. The Democratic Party has multiple times booted people out, shown them the door, because they did not adhere to basic standards of decency. Anthony Weiner, for example. Republicans, you got to start doing this because it is an embarrassment right now where we stand. That's not the only guy. That's just the last name I think you would have known. Here is yet another blatantly criminal act from somebody working for the GOP. It doesn't matter if it's Matt Gaetz. Doesn't matter if it's Joel Greenberg. Doesn't matter if it's GOP. High to low level, you can expect crime. Here's TYT talking about it.
Mr. McGrath and I spoke regularly and spoke last night in anticipation of the trial beginning today.
I've heard this a hell of a lot. I heard this when the Oxford High School shooter's parents fled. They tried to escape rather than seek the charges that Michigan Attorney Dana Nessel said they ought to face with their irresponsible behavior around their gun ownership and their son. This is an attorney having to explain why his client didn't show up for a court appearance in a criminal trial. Oh boy. Or rather, a criminal proceeding.
And I have no idea where he is. I hope that he's safe, and I hope to speak to him very soon.
In other words, he just made everything a hell of a lot worse, and that lawyer has nothing they can do other than say, I'm not assisting this guy in fleeing. Let's let TYT break it down.
Yikes, yeah, that definitely sounds foreboding. That was the lawyer to Roy McGrath. That's the one-time chief of staff for former Maryland GOP Governor Larry Hogan. And this is all coming after his failure to appear in court on an arrest warrant. Now, Baltimore and Washington, D.C. agents with the U.S. Marshal Service were assisting in executing that arrest warrant as McGrath stands accused of a variety of crimes, largely financial in nature, which include wire fraud, embezzlement, and allegations of falsifying a government document. McGrath is accused of receiving severance payment worth 1 year of his salary of his previous position, $233,648. As the head of Maryland Environmental Service, a quasi-governmental entity, McGrath is also accused of a failure to take vacation time while traveling to Florida and a European cruise. The falsifying documents charge stem from allegations that Hogan knew about McGrath's severance payment from the MES before moving to the governor's office and adding that Hogan signed off on the agreement. McGrath also faces state wiretapping violation charges for allegedly illegally recording phone calls. You know what? The man is really, he's got a rap sheet coming for him. And that seems to be the case, which is why, not showing up would kind of be problematic, especially when, you get that whole warrant thing. Anyways, but since news broke of McGrath's federal investigation and charges, Hogan has forcefully denied knowing anything about the severance agreement between McGrath and MES. And it really seems to indicate here that, again, these individuals have no respect for our system in any way, even when they were very much a part of it. Alonzo.
Well, he's just not a good criminal. I mean, the first thing you learn in crime, right? Crime is a cash business. You don't write checks, you don't collect checks. That there is a paper trail. You don't sign an authorization to pay a criminal by check.
At the low level, certainly. I do want to point out that was Trump's impression when he was talking to Michael Cohen. There's a recording of him. It's been played on the news recently in regards to the Stormy Daniels payment, where Cohen is talking about how they're going to arrange payment. And Trump goes, hey, what payment? We do cash. And then Cohen has to explain to him, well, look, people are going to be looking at your finances, and a $130,000 cash withdrawal will be seen as an attempt to cover this up. We want to cover this up in a different way. Yeah, criminal behavior. It's a criminal party.
Is a paper trail. These guys are just not very good at it. If you're on a cruise, if you're on a trip where it's documented, you're, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from the office, yeah, you got to put in vacation time, okay? You can't say you were working remotely from a cruise during it just. So what we have here is quite simply a bad criminal, a dumb criminal who's going to be arrested, who's going to go down on federal charges, and you have a governor trying to distance himself so he doesn't go down with him. And the note there is you shouldn't have signed the paper. The minute you sign something, you're going to be in trouble. All right. Mm-hmm. It's crime. Stick to cash. That's how crime works. Okay. You can't be Venmoing your fellow criminals.
Yeah. I mean, that's at this point, do you even have to check which party it is? Do you even have to check? Is there any confusion when you see something like former politician flees from police? Right? You know what it's going to be. I still suggest checking the articles, but my God. This is another case of contacting your attorney, your state's attorney general. This is another case of contacting the Justice Department to tell them that you expect that these matters will be taken seriously now. Now, in this specific case, you don't have to do anything. The police are going to find this guy. He's not bright. Alonzo Bowden goes on to say in that clip, I guarantee you right now he's paying for a hotel room with a credit card in his name. Yeah, that sounds about right. That's about the level of criminal mastermind we're dealing with here. But look, it's the whole party is this. And they are this because we have allowed them to be this. We have allowed there to be a party where there is no consequence if you commit crime. So, of course, people that commit crime are going to pour in to that party. Why wouldn't they? It's gotten worse. I've been watching this for 20 years. It has gotten worse. And it got worse because Trump's presidency was basically an advertisement for how this party functions. It's up to us. The public needs to put pressure on the Justice Department to say, We're not going to put up with it anymore. Contact the Department of Justice, link in the description. Tell them that you expect charges filed for any crime that happens that the Justice Department is aware of or suspects. Charges are expected to be filed, no matter how powerful the person is. If you live in one of the fake elector states, they're listed in the description. I listed it at the end of last segment as well. Contact your state's attorney general. Tell them you want an investigation started in the fake elector case. What the hell? Let's rattle it off one more time. That's Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Yeah. Michigan and Georgia are already doing it. Let's look at some comments here. Christopher Andrews says, "What up, Jake? What up, Christopher? Good to see you." Patrick Thibodeau says, "I think the Stormy Daniels case, we talked about that, is the weakest they have on Trump. Nothing will happen to him from that." Ooh, I'm hoping it ain't so. John McDonough says, "Is there a way to send a couple of bucks your way? If there is, I don't see it." Yes, in the comments. In the comments section, there is a next to the emoji button. There is a there's a button that looks like it's a rectangle with a $sign in it. If you click on that, you can send a super chat. That'll highlight a message as well as give me an amount of money that you feel is appropriate to toss in the old busker's hat. John McDonough says. Patrick Thibodeau says, "No clue. Sounds like a children's caper story." I agree in regards to the movie Popok was talking about. John McDonough says, "This guy Popok kills me. Spit it out, man." I know. I mean, he's a good guy for sure, but just saying, yeah, Popok is a charming guy. He's sort of certainly an acquired taste, but I love him. I am gonna do, I think, stuff with him though that just. Because he does do longer form stuff like I do, unfortunately. And I think it does need to be chopped up a little bit. Hey, Patrick Thibodeau has learned a little bit about this film he was talking about. The film follows Emily Benetto, a young woman saddled with student debt who gets involved in a credit card scam that pulls her into the criminal underworld of Los Angeles. Son of a gun. I kind of want to watch it now. All right. That's going to be that'll be a weekend thing. Jesus didn't charge. Man, I love that name. I'm from Georgia, so I get a day off from letter writing. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Great job. Never heard of that Emily movie. Justice is coming, and that's going to be glorious. Hell yeah. Patrick Thibodeau says it actually doesn't sound half bad. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm with you. All right. Let's have a gander. This is the everlasting story, because I was going to do it yesterday. I didn't have the sauce ready. You know, I didn't have the definite what you can do. Said, all right, what the hell? I'll do it today. Well, today there's an update. Let's go to a caller from the Majority Report. I believe this was yesterday. Might have been the day before, but they're discussing a filibuster that was happening in Nebraska. One brave state senator from Nebraska held out against a massively overfavored GOP, and prevented anti-trans legislation from going through unchallenged. Let's start with the background. Let's listen to that call from the Majority Report, where even Sam Cedar tells you a little bit about what you can do.
Calling from a 402 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? You are the final caller on today's Majority Report program.
This is Colin from Nebraska.
Colin from Nebraska. Colin from Nebraska.
Okay, hold up one second. I do want to say, if you are also a fan of the Majority Report and you call into the Majority Report, don't say, "Is this me?" Everybody says, "Is this me?" I called in once and I said, "Is this me?" It's so natural to say. But what he just did, Colin from Nebraska, nailed it. And the reason why you do that is because it doesn't actually establish if it's you, unless you give a unique handle, such as name from location. Just a pet peeve because I myself did it, and now I want to make good for the universe and poor Sam Cedar's graying hair.
Yes, I wanted to talk about Machaela Cavanaugh, Senator Cavanaugh, in the legislature.
Yeah, this is an amazing story. She has now been filibustering for 3 weeks and has vowed that no legislation will pass in the State House. I mean, she's been going for 3 weeks. Tell us more.
Yeah, so today, actually, another senator, Senator she's a young conservative. She was appointed by then Governor Ricketts, now Senator Ricketts. She just moved to censure Senator Cavanaugh for, saying that the bill for anti-trans bills was genocidal. And so she has just been motioned to censure. It's not final, but that's what's going on. And got some notes here. So for those of you who don't know, she's filibustering because a newly elected senator has brought 2 anti-trans bills. They've both been prioritized, which means that they will have priority, or they will be heard or debated on quicker. So she has vowed to basically just slow it down, take the full 8 hours on every single bill. Doesn't matter if it's a good bill or a bad bill. She just wants to pass less and force the conservatives' hand and decide if they really want to pursue these bills. So it's been 3 weeks, but they have like off days, so it's been about 13 or 15 days. And if people have seen the AP article, she did a whole week with strep throat actually too.
Wow.
Doing this, but yeah, I've been listening to the legislature for a few years, and this session's really crazy because the conservatives they've been inching closer and closer to what's it?
Supermajority?
Sorry, I'm losing my words. Yeah. So it takes 33 votes, and they're at 32. So they really just need one Democrat, and it's a conservative Democrat could swing everything, which is the way it's been going. So.
Well, you folks can, I would imagine, sending emails, calling her office with support is probably helpful. Maybe we can find an email address where people can just send an email and tell her how much she's appreciated, because it's a gutsy thing to do, and it's probably just like a physically exhausting thing to do.
All right. Well, first up, yeah, it is gutsy. She's surrounded. They just said there's nearing a supermajority for Republicans. So in terms of voting, she is surrounded by right-wing opinion. And it's also exhausting. The filibuster is not designed to be pleasant. It is exhausting. Do support this woman. This senator's amazing. Got to say, John McDonough gifted 10 What You Can Do memberships. Thank you so much. That is highly appreciated. We are going to be able to do more with more members. I can't thank you enough. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this with Sam Cedar.
Oh my! And these are just half days right now, so there's still bills being heard in committee right now because it's a 90-day session.
And I should be clear for what this guy's talking about. It's anti-trans legislation. It's to prevent people under, I believe, the age of 19 from getting gender-affirming care. It's straight up taking the decision away from the doctors, away from the parents, away from the individual, and giving that power to the state alone to say, no, you can't have this, even though doctors say that it makes a massive difference. You can't have this. She was filibustering because this was not even, as they explained in the beginning, but maybe not as clear, this was going to be essentially fast-tracked in the legislation, which would have spared the GOP a lot of having to explain themselves.
So they do have to pass a budget, which is going to take up a lot of time too. So she's only been doing really half days. It'll be interesting when full days, and actually the speaker has moved to start doing full days because he's just tired of it, frankly. But yeah, folks can go to Nebraska legislature.gov. It's a pretty easy site to navigate. You can view it. It's day 45, which means half the session is already done. And I think AP article mentions it, but only like 26 bills have advanced, but like 3 or 4 times that would have been moved to, in Nebraska, there's 3 rounds. So it's general file, select file, final reading.
So let me ask you this.
For the record, if you were desperately trying to catch that address, I got you. Contact information is in the description.
Could she theoretically actually keep that bill from showing up over the course of this session anyways?
The speaker could schedule it. So she's kind of hoping for that to happen, if I heard her right this morning. The speaker could just change the schedule. And so I think she would welcome that because, she would just file motions.
Hold up.
She's been filing all types of.
So let's look at that. That's the background. Filibustering in Nebraska. Let's look at what happens today.
The filibuster that has tied up the Nebraska legislature is now over.
It all began back from February 23rd. Senator Cavanaugh of Omaha making her stand in regard to a pair of bills, mainly LB 574.
That's a bill that would ban medical treatment on transgender youth, which she said passed through committee without any consideration of amendments and without regard to hours of testimony against them. The senator announced a deal on the floor this morning.
Let's keep her face up there because she's a GD hero. But yeah, filibuster's over. And she won.
I am going to take a break and let you all talk if you want to, or we'll get through the 3 bills on the agenda and have an early lunch break. So
she filibustered through strep throat for weeks and weeks and weeks. Hell yeah.
I appreciate everyone who has come to the table and worked on these issues, and I appreciate that we'll be having the debate next week.
The deal is that House Speaker Arch of La Vista has agreed to bring the transgender bill to the floor for debate. The date has been set for next Tuesday. To address in our
Just a fantastic job. My God. Let's talk about why you should contact her even though it's over. There is a link in the description to contact this person. There are a number of reasons why you should. First of all, it was a brave thing to do. Telling a brave person that they have been brave is good. Reinforce good behavior. Second of all, she is going to be interviewed left and right. You want to know where I come from? That second video I showed was from 6 Wow T News. That's more my thing. I looked at their website. They use, in fact, the very same content system that I'm familiar with. She's going to be interviewed by that news station and every other local news station. We want to give her the ability to say, I've been hearing from people all over the country telling me that they're pleased to see somebody fighting for the rights of Americans. That will accomplish, number one, it's going to make her feel good. Number two, it's going to make her more likely to do something like this again. This was an exhausting experience. Her bones will remember this. You could hear in her voice how tired she was. A cumulative effect of working hard. That, hearing positive feedback after something like that, gives a person tons of energy. It's rejuvenating. But it also, in regards to this station, WOW T News, we hear about how nefarious all the time these news organizations are. Oh, they're owned by this or that, and so they do the bidding of this or that. Let me tell you, they're an NBC affiliate. I worked for an NBC affiliate. There are very few things that go into their decision-making process. Yes, they ask themselves, is this newsworthy? But then when they're picking between the newsworthy stories, they're going to turn to their digital person and say, hey, Jane, how well did that story do on Machaela's filibuster? If Jane has the ability to say, it did great, it was one of our biggest stories, they're likely to contact producers at NBC and say, hey, we did a story, maybe you can play some clips from it. That local reporting then filters up to the national level. If during their interview with her, she mentions that a national audience was contacting her, they are more likely to filter that story up to NBC proper and say, hey, I know we're under this deal. You have the ability, you provide us live feeds from events, and in return, and allow us to play some of your programming to fill the time. And in return, we give you pieces of news that we did. Here's one such piece of news. Here's an interview that we did. I have seen my news anchor on Rachel Maddow's show from things like that. I have seen reports done by people a couple years out of college sometimes wind up on national news programs because of things like that. I know I was an NBC affiliate, not an MSNBC affiliate, but even the big networks have deals amongst themselves. The point being, contact this person. Tell them, I am proud of what you did. I think what you did was fantastic. I love to hear it. It will rejuvenate her, and it will also give her a talking point, which she can use to make the story bigger. Because in this case, if the story is bigger, it's going to inspire more local politicians, state-level politicians. That's huge. Another thing that it does, which is incredibly valuable, is it tells her what the national taste is for this. Remember what we said earlier. She's surrounded by very right-wing opinion. Her whole life deals with tons of right-wing opinion. We want not just the heroes on our side. We want not just the paladins, the pure good. That's supposed to be a great sword. It doesn't matter. We want the greedy people on our side, too. I don't think she's one of them. My point is, though, her colleagues, amongst them, there might be people who are more your. I haven't ragged on Michigan in a minute. Let me rag on Michigan. More your Alyssa Slotkins. You know, not exactly a paragon of progressive belief, but willing to pursue progressive ideas if they see political advantage. If they see a colleague they equate themselves to. If another state-level person hears that there's a national audience for protecting trans people, they are more likely to make that play. I don't care if they're doing it for pessimistic reasons. If they're doing it because, I might want to be president one day, or I might want to be secretary of blank one day, or I might want to run at the for governor one day. We want them motivated, everyone who's got the ability to make our laws, motivated to appeal to a progressive audience. So if we flood Senator Cavanaugh's inbox, particularly now that she is going to be doing the media tour, I presume after a couple days of recuperation, if we flood her inbox with messages from around the country, that's you, that's me, there's 10 folks watching. If 10 people from around the country right now sent her a message, that would be a huge deal. A little state-level office in Nebraska does not get 10 emails a day from their constituents, much less 10 emails from people who heard about what they did all over the country. Make that splash. Give her the ammunition she needs for the interviews. Give her colleagues the motivation they need to appeal to a national audience. And give everybody who's out there fighting the good fight the energy they need to keep fighting. It is going to be a long, ugly fight to pull America into the 21st century and to get it set up to go beyond that, to be better than it ever was. We need to get it back from where it was in the past. To do that, we're going to have to fight hard, and we're going to need a lot of energy. So, contact this person, Senator Machaela Cavanaugh. Tell her she did a great job. And understand that even though it's as simple as clicking one link and writing a kind message, the effect it will have on actual people's lives can be tremendous. You have a lot more power than you've been told you have until now. Use it. Checking out some of these comments, cha. Oh, my word. Catherine Wolf, welcome to the Lobbyist Club. Thanks to John's gifted membership. That is delightful. Zix1326 says, I believe that young woman was on MSNBC. She was great. Heck yes. And every time she makes national appearances, we want Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez this. Every time she's there, we want to give her the ammunition she needs. We want her to be able to spread the message that people liked what she did. John McDonough says, I don't exactly know what I just did, but I've been watching for a while, and I like the supporters of this channel, and I really want to contribute. That has a massive effect. The gifting memberships is a very useful for this channel. My understanding, for the record, is that it's a one-time payment so people can experiment with the memberships. And on this channel, we only have one member of memberships, which is $5. But I will ensure that's the case. Zix, the one-time thing. Zix1326 says, how about South Carolina doing a law to apply the death penalty to women who do not want to be pregnant? Yeah, folks that don't want to be pregnant, having the death penalty applied to them. That is something I am working on as well, but this is the very same thing. And I'm going to be, I'll just give you a spoiler. I'm going to be telling you the same thing. Find those politicians who are fighting and encourage them. Make sure they understand that they're not fighting alone. Oh, thank God. 61326 says, are trying to apply it to women who don't want to be pregnant, i.e. abortion. I saw the interview with her on, I think, Rachel. She was excellent. Yeah, I'm excited. I hope she becomes a national figure now. Catherine Wolf says, oh, I get it. The euphemism threw me. Yes, just disgusting. I use a lot of weird ones. Ant Button. Ooh, I like that. Senator Machaela Cavanaugh earned her place in the largely unsung hero Hall of Fame. Wholeheartedly agree. Now let's rip her out of that Hall of Fame by making her a sung hero. Let's sing the hell out of her praises. One of the many things that I love about Senator Cavanaugh's bravery and dedication, says Aunt Button, is the fact that no corporation is paying her to do it. Yes. It came from the heart. This might even be a case where we recommend her to the Justice Democrats if she ain't already there. The Paladins of Furman upset Virginia today in the NCAA tourney. Ha! Interesting. All right, I'll have a gander. I do like that word paladin, though. I should say your old pal Jake has played his share of D&D, so that's going to creep in from time to time. Jesus didn't charge. Okay, you've persuaded me to write the senator, my man. Excellent. I love it. So stretch goals here for Cripes. Stretch goals here for the channel. One day when we are at the level that TYT is, only we're an organizing channel, I am going to pay Denzel Washington entirely to come on and my man one YouTube comment. I'm putting down the marker now. It's the stretch goal for my career. We'll see how it goes. If you are here now and you wind up there then, and it does indeed happen, you can say you saw the genesis of that gag. Well, I've got 95 minutes of stream to chop up and make consumable to the house, as we call those who watch the VOD. Thank you very much, y'all, for joining me today. I had a blast. Good to be back. Looking forward to tomorrow. We're going to do an XL stream of some sort. If you were here for the last one, it's a lot more loosey-goosey, a lot more fun. If you are a member now, remember, I'm going to be talking to you in a moment in the community tab for members about what we want to maybe do on Fridays. I think it's an intriguing concept. But I'd like to run it by you first and let you guys get a chance to shape the channel. That's ultimately what we're going to do here. This whole thing is built on the idea that a group of people, relatively like-minded, are going to make better decisions than one knucklehead in Michigan. Speaking of, I've been your old pal Jake. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. I'll see you next time.